All right, let's go ahead and get started. For this class, we're going to explore 3 different software that you can use to create your website. If you're on a Mac, you can use TextEdit. If you're on a PC, you can use Notepad++ for the first one. Notepad++ you will have to download, and I have the resources in a file under our class project, so you will have the links for that. So I'm going to show this on a Mac. So the first one is just going to be, basic notepads, basically. The next one, we're going to go into Photoshop. We're going to explore that for web design and as well Dreamweaver. So TextEdit, Photoshop, and Dreamweaver. If you're on a PC, just go ahead and open Notepad++. If you're on a Mac, go ahead and open your TextEdit. We're going to want to go ahead, click on New Document, and let's just go ahead and save it. I'm just going to call it Test. I'm going to pause here for 1 second. I always like to see my extensions, so if your extensions are hid, make sure that that's not checked so that you can see the dot, whatever it is after it. Now, right now we can see we have a problem right off the bat, and it says .rtf. We don't want rich text, we want HTML. We want a web page. So under our file format, change that to web page. You can see .html. And for now, I'm just saving it on my desktop so I can find it really easy for these demos. And if you're just experimenting, do the same thing. All right, I'm going to close it. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to open with TextEdit. So when I do that, it looks different. It's the exact same file, just closed and reopened. If yours on the reopen does not show your code, and on the Notepad++ you shouldn't have this problem, but on a Mac you may, what you need to do is go into the TextEdit main menu and then click on Preferences. It's probably defaulted to New Document, but what you want to do is click on Open and Save. Make sure this first box is clicked where it says Display HTML files as HTML code instead of formatted text. If this isn't selected, you will not be able to see the code on your page. And if you wanted to always remember that, I'm just going to close this out. Oops, not completely out. Go back into TextEdit. I have no window open, so it functions just like the InDesign suite, and it will remember it when nothing's open. You can do the same steps. Preferences, open and save. Make sure that first box is checked, and then go ahead and close it. Right-click on your file. Open with TextEdit, and you should be able to see everything. So let's take a look at this. It's giving us the basic containers for what we need to design our web page. And for these early stages, just keep in mind, we're just going to be playing around with formatting text, maybe adding a little bit of color here and there, but don't put the cart before the horse. We all want something really super, groovy and beautiful, but in these early stages, they can be rather plain and boring. I recommend starting with the TextEdit and the Notepad++ just to get comfortable with the actual code characters themselves. And then that way, when you go into Dreamweaver, things make a little bit more sense. And no, it's going to stylistically not be the sexiest thing ever, but you are going to have that playtime that you need seeing what everything does. So my advice is always just start with TextEdit and play around with it, and then worry about the styling and page layout a little bit longer down the line. Photoshop, when we get to that stage, it's going to look a lot, I'm going to say, prettier in the early stages, but that's sort of, not the standard to the norm. So most deal with it in the code point of view, but with the Photoshop, at least you do get the pretties right off the bat. You will not get the pretties right off the bat with TextEdit. So let's go ahead and dissect this just a little bit. The first line, anytime you see this little exclamation, it's just a note, and it's not going to show up in our web page. I'm just going to hit return as I go through this so you can sort of see the structure of it. This first line, just HTML, it's in the brackets. This is saying this is the start of the web page. And at the very bottom, you can see the end bracket HTML. This is saying this is the end of the web page. So think of this, if the web page itself was one giant sentence, This is your, start, the capitalization, the first bit of that sentence, and this is the period at the end of it. And this is the content that's within your sentence. So you need to start and you need to finish. Our head, the heading up here, and I'm just going to return the end so you can see the bit. This is telling you the info, the sort of behind the scenes bit of the web page. They do put a little bit extra whenever you're defaulting here. Dreamweaver does the same a little bit. You don't need quite all of this. For now, in the early stages, let us not worry about the extras. Let's just leave it at the default, and then we can later down the line delve further into this. Early stages, ignore all the extra little bits. Let's just deal with, you have your header, you need your title inside that header, and then you need to close that header. The title is the actual title of your web page. So let's just call this Super Awesome Test Site. Exclamations, because we're super excited about it. All right, save your file, and I'm just going to scoot this over a little bit. And when I double click on the file, and I sort of have the files both open at once, and that way we can do a compare and contrast as we're working, and you can see the changes happen live. So at the top here, we now see Super Awesome Test Site and all those glorious exclamations. So we now have titled our web page. Congratulations, you got the first step done. All right, let's pop back into our web page over in TextEdit. So our heading's taken care of. Now let's go into the next part. This is our body. This is the content. This is the photos. This is the words. This is whatever it is that's going to actually go on the page. It's going to be housed within this section. We need to give it a sort of hierarchy, and one of the first things to start with hierarchies is our headings. So think of this sort of like newspapers. We have our main headline, we have our subheader, and all the little bits that go in, our byline, the content itself, the body, etc. So let's start that. Our first one is our heading, and heading is the largest that we're going to see. It's going to be the first thing that shows up, and it's going to be particularly true for the search engine optimizations and as well the responsive. Headline 1, and I'm just going to type it, headline 1, and we're going to close it as well, and headline 1. Save it. So what it's basically saying, and let me add extra space just so we can see this a little bit better. This is saying it's going to be pretty large, the largest it can be, and this is what it's going to say, and that's ending it. So when I hit refresh, there we go. Headline 1. Headline 1. And then the style is the bracket H1. The next one, headline 2. H2, headline 2. Close that. Save. Go in, refresh. There we go. And you guessed it, we're going to go up to 6 with this. So if you're working along with me, go ahead and build up to 6. H4. H5. Close it off. And 6. And close it. Everything looks a-okay. If you do get a typo, it's actually a good thing because you're going to learn from it. If you do get a typo, if you do something and you want it to be doing something else and it's not doing it, you have a typo somewhere, and it's usually, it's a misspelling, it's a fumble on the key, it's you've missed the bracket, you've missed the close, etc. So just if that happens, do not panic. Just calmly go back and look at your code and sort of work backwards. So if say I missed that end bracket, or I didn't close it, or what have you, and it's just not going to function quite properly, just go back in, work backwards, and find that error. It is also case sensitive, so just make sure you maintain consistency with that as well. So if you get a typo, don't worry, just work backwards until you find it. All right, so this is giving us our hierarchy. It's saying biggest to littlest on this one. you know, this is going to help the reader's eye flow through. And it's also going to give you a positioning on the page for readability when it's in the SEO stage. Let me go ahead and save this one last time, and we're going to add one more to our stew pot, our paragraph. Now, let's just say I have a headline and I want to have some copy there, and I think I have some Lauren Ipson still in my pasteboard. I'm not going to have all of this for now. We'll come back to that next bit. And I'm going to go ahead and tell it, I want you to be a paragraph. P is paragraph. And we're going to end the paragraph. Save it, refresh it, and now we have a paragraph. So this is looking a little bit better instead of that sort of descent. So if you were building something that's like a blog or, you know, going back to the newspaper, you can build the structure that we're already used to in the hierarchical flow that we're comfortable with. Let's add that second and third paragraph. So I'm just going to keep those in there. Fresh paragraph. If you want, you can put that extra space in there. It just helps with readability. Close it. You guessed it. One more paragraph. And close that paragraph. Refresh. Beautiful. Now this is looking a little bit more interesting. All right, so what happens if you want to start styling that text? Let's just sort of pick on that middle paragraph there. So they're all blending together there. What if we want to give it a little bit of a jump out? All right, let's focus on it. Let's make it bold. I'm going to hit a new line, and I'm going to type the word strong. I'm going to go to the end, and I'm going to end that strong. Save it, refresh it. There we go. We have some bolds. Say I want it bold italic. Oops, don't close it. Emphasis is EM. End bracket that emphasis. Refresh. Beautiful. Now it's really jumping out, and it's going to make it a little bit easier to read. One more thing. What if we want this to be a block quote? Block quote and block quote. Save. Refresh. All right, that's going to help reinforce our web page readability and hierarchy a little bit more. Just makes it jump out in that space just a little bit. So let's backtrack and go through each of these again. They are in the paragraph. Strong is our bold. EM is our emphasis. That gives us our italic. And block quote is going to give us that little jump out that we like, and it's going to set our left align off a little bit for that section. And you can see I sort of worked backwards, so I'm going to end the block quote, I'm going to end the emphasis, and I'm going to end the strong, and then end that paragraph so that we have everything flow normally. What happens if you miss something? Let's say I forget to end the emphasis. I'm going to save it, refresh it. Oops. It doesn't know where to stop. The ends are giving us our pauses, and it's giving us the markers that say, hey, turn off here. The style is no longer needed. So if you didn't want that to be in italics and you realize it upon refresh, just go back in and go, oh, you know what? There it was. I forgot to close it up. Save it. And then that marker's there and it knows to fix it. So for the first little bit, here's what I want you to experiment with. Make a new text edit or Notepad++. Create the title for your site. And it can be anything. This is just for you in practice. Practice makes perfect. Go ahead and put your headlines in. Do the 1 through 6 just like we did. And then add a paragraph or two. Once you have your paragraphs in, experiment with the bolds the italics and as well the block quotes, just to get comfortable with formatting your text beyond just the basic paragraph, and get those paragraph tags in there too. If you want, screenshot what you've done and upload it to the class file so we can see your progress.